This time on Rad Rat Video, we're talking about Tony Hawk's Proving Ground, the last and possibly worst big budget major Tony Hawk series release. Possibly the last of all time as well. Let's take a look at how the series ended. Welcome back to Rad Rat Video, the channel where you can learn something new about skateboarding. Subscribe so you can learn new things about your favorite pros, about different tricks, about skateboarding, video games, and all kinds of other topics. Today we're taking a look at Tony Hawk's Proving Ground, which is the last major Tony Hawk game that ever came out. After this was Ride and Shred, which are kind of spin-offs. You had HD and Tony Hawk 5, which were both budget games, although they bumped up the price on 5. It was still a budget game in development. This was the last one that was a major release where they got the whole team together and really tried to do it big. And it may be the last one ever, in fact, because Tony Hawk has said that he is no longer working with Activision anymore, and they own the rights to the Tony Hawk series. So I don't know exactly what legal language they have there, but it may be that Tony Hawk is not allowed to have Tony Hawk's anything anymore. So this may be it. This may be the last serious release in the entire series, and it is one of the worst. It's tough to compete with all the spin-offs and stuff, but this is the worst main series game by far. And a lot of people think that Skate killed the Tony Hawk series, and there's probably a little bit of truth to that, but when you play this game, it's pretty obvious that it killed itself. So let's take a look. Let's talk about the new additions to the game. Each game in the Tony Hawk series has to add something, but all the low-hanging fruit has already been picked. They added in reverts and spine transfers in Pro Skater 3 and 4, and that's pretty much the last thing that made a difference. Getting off your board and climbing stuff just made the games less about skating. In Project 8, they added in Nail the Trick, where you can go into slow-mo mode and kick the board around. But what's new this time? Well, speaking of Nail the Trick, which they should have renamed Nail the Flip, there's now Nail the Grab. Hold L2 in this mode and you can grab the board, tweak it in different directions, and do finger flips and varials, which it also calls finger flips. It slows the game to a halt, doesn't really feel especially satisfying, and doesn't give you a ton of points. You'd probably never touch it if it wasn't required so often. And it's required for bad reasons too. Because the world slows down, the game actually gives you more distance while you're in Nail the Trick mode. So sometimes you'll do gaps and it will tell you to use this mode to clear it. That's just stupid. There's also Nail the Manual now, which is awful. Stevie Williams, because you know how tech he is, teaches you how to do this. Hold R2 in the air and you can lean up or down to land in a manual or a nose manual. It's awkward, slow, and weird. It took me a long time to get a hang of it and to beat the first challenge. You can land in a manual, let go of R2 to ollie again, and do other kinds of tricks. At this point, it just seems like an alternate and worse way to control the game. You can do a manual heel flip to manual really easily in the game, or you could choose to click your sticks in and do it really awkwardly and weird. One of the additions I actually like, though, is the aggro kick, although I could do without that name. If you hit R1, your skater will push, and if you keep the rhythm up, you'll go a lot faster. At first, this seems like a really good idea. When you're skating around the city looking for goals, there's something you do. It's not just holding X the whole time. But the problem is, it's just shoehorned into the game. You can still get speed by ollieing into and out of grinds over and over, so you can play the game exactly like the last one and be fine. You might never even use the aggro kick, except that it makes you do it all the time. They used R1 for that, so they might as well use L1 too, right? What trick has never been in a Tony Hawk game? What do you think they could have added? Do you have your guesses in yet? They added in carving and slash grinds, which are already technically in the game. You can turn on vert and you can grind without ollieing, so what's the point? There is none. Here's how it works. When you're in transition, you can tap L1 and you'll get stuck to the vert wall and ride along. You can ride along on stickers and do this as a trick in a combo. It looks stupid and it feels worse. If you hold L1 instead of just tapping it, you'll do a slash grind. This could be cool if they made it look different. Maybe if he planted his hand and only grinded a couple feet, it would look okay, but it's just a normal grind without a balance meter. These additions are just stupid. You'll never ever do them unless you're forced to, and it's the worst possible way to address the problems with the engine. Do you remember in Pro Skater 2 where you could skate parks and actually do stuff on them? You could skate a fun box or a hip and it would actually act like a real skateboard. You had a ton of pop and perfect consistency, but playing the game still resembled skateboarding. Around the time the Underground games came out, skate parks were useless. You could skate up to an obstacle and next thing you know, you're in the rafters. Skating real-life obstacles wasn't even possible anymore. So they started to fix that with hacks, like in Thug with the hip transfers, or American Wasteland where you could stomp tricks down onto banks. It's the only way to actually land on something without clearing it by half a mile. And this is just the latest version of that. Casually ride up to transition and you'll get 80 feet of air, so they add in a button press to make gravity stronger so you can actually stay in the pool and grind and carve like you might in real life. Something else that's kind of new is the re-emphasis on climbing. This isn't a new thing, of course, but in Project 8 you could get off the board, it's just that you never really needed to. It might help to climb a ladder instead of skating all the way up a hill or something like that, but they pretty much never required it. And that's the only way climbing should be in a skating game, but here it's back in full force. They bring in Bam Margera to show you how to climb on stuff and to jump around. It still controls just as bad as ever, except it gets less forgivable as time goes on. They had how many years to get this to work, but they just didn't. But the biggest problem with the game is how sketchily put together everything is. When playing, I was always expecting something to break. Even if I just misunderstood how to complete a challenge, I would assume the game was breaking first because that's more likely. I'll give you a few examples. In this one, I'm supposed to be impressing these skaters by grinding around the fountain. I do it, and now I'm just stuck in this mode. I can't ollie, but I can moonwalk. I have no idea how to get past this. I'm completely stuck. And this challenge was pretty hard with the stats you have at first, so I really didn't want to start over. Too bad, I had to turn off the system and reload it to do it again. At another point, I had this barrier stuck on me for a while. Later, I hit the ground really hard and got stuck in it. At another point, the game just froze solid and I couldn't do anything other than reset the system. Here, the hammer icon doesn't work. This is how you mod something. You're supposed to see an option pop up, and it just doesn't a lot of the time. I restarted the event and then it worked. Here, I'm supposed to be learning how to revert into a manual, which is weird because it taught me that in the beginning and now I'm halfway through the game, but I just keep getting am. Why? Because the ramp it sets you up at doesn't have a wide enough flat bottom. You don't have enough time for your manual to count before you hit the other wall, so you have to start the challenge and then move so that you're skating the longer side of the pool. Or how about this challenge? After learning how to nail the grab, I'm supposed to do 5 of them over this gap. It seems pretty clear what to do, but it just never worked. The obvious interpretation of this is that you need to do 5 grabs, but when you land that, it just kicks you back to the top. There's a timer here, so you obviously can't do one grab 5 times, but I tried every other interpretation of that instruction I could think of. Maybe it's not 5 grabs, it's a multiplier of 5. Considering the new way this is counted, that's a ton of grabs. But that didn't work. Maybe you have to nail the grab on 5 separate occasions in one combo? Nope, that doesn't work either. Maybe you have to change your aim and land somewhere else? No. No matter what I do, it just kicks me back to the top and doesn't give me a warning message or anything. I was never able to beat this challenge. Much later, I realized that a grab isn't considered nailed until you hold it for a certain amount of time. So even though I was doing a bunch of grabs, I never technically nailed them, I guess. But that doesn't really even mean anything, and they don't even attempt to explain it. But I've got another one for you. In this event, I'm supposed to be taking pictures all over the subway station. It gives me a list of tricks and locations, so here I go. The first thing is to grind the ticket booth. When I do, nothing happens. Not only is there no photo icon, the game doesn't slow down either, which it usually does, and when I click in the right stick, which is normally the shutter button, nothing happens. So I tried the ticket booth, I tried nailing the manual on this ledge and this ramp over here, none of them did anything at all. I even tried stalling on the shopping cart. By the way, good luck getting a stall to actually work. It just does a grind and calls it a stall most of the time, but still, I managed to do it right after a while. There's no question I did a stall on the shopping cart, but nothing happened. And I have a theory as to why. In the last challenge, when I wasn't recording, I was doing a series of pictures at different spots, kind of like this one, but one at a time. I did one and messed up, so I hit retry. But instead of restarting that picture, it glitched out and took me to the next one. After that, the pictures just didn't seem to work right anymore. I don't know if this is a glitch or not, but how about this? Now, to get into nollie stands, you're supposed to click in your left stick. When I do it, nothing happens. I was never able to nollie in the whole game. My stick works because I can use them to get in and nail the trick mode. Maybe someone has to teach me them to unlock it or something, but if so, that challenge wasn't required. I went the whole game without nollie stance. Another thing that had me really confused is the Waypoint map system. Instead of being able to warp to a challenge, you have to mark it on the map and skate there. And that's fine, but it will try to lead you ways you can't go. In this case, I unlocked a challenge in another area. It takes me up to this load tunnel and then instantly kicks me out when I try to go in there. There are certain bridges and things that you can take, but you unlock them slowly and it's not clear how to get around until you've got a lot of practice. Even then, you'll find yourself skating for a couple of minutes between challenges every time. I really wish I could just pick it off a menu. Compare that to Skate. The whole world is open, there's multiple routes to get places, the city isn't divided physically in ways that forced you to get from section to section. Obviously, this wasn't a limit of the hardware. But even when things are working as expected, it's still sketchy. Check out these 900s, which are frontside now for no reason. If they called it frontside, that would be one thing, but they don't. Anyway, just watch closely. I can land early, glitch it out, and roll away just fine. Switching grinds, landing in manuals, all that stuff just feels unstable. It's almost like they took the engine from Madden or Gears of War and just tweaked it until it started to resemble skateboarding and just left it like that. But let's get into the structure of the career. The actual storyline is back to basics, nothing too crazy like the underground titles. You're just a dude trying to come up and get sponsors and all that stuff. And I say dude because it doesn't seem possible to play as a woman, which you've been able to do in most of the games. Maybe they just ran out of time to record the dialogue in different voices, but for as much as they brag about the updated player creator, you actually have less control than ever. So this time in the career, you're given different career tracks to follow. First is the career skater, so you do contests, film for videos, take pictures, that kind of stuff. This is the kind of thing you would usually see in these later Tony Hawk games. Next is the rigger category. I'm saying that very carefully so I don't get banned from YouTube, but the idea is that this is a collection of challenges about building and customizing stuff. And I've always disliked this in games. I don't mind placing a kicker in Skate or something, but this is so clunky and terrible that I always dreaded getting these challenges. Here are a couple examples. First, I have to collect these construction supplies, screws and sandpaper and stuff. I have to grab them and take a picture of myself doing it by clicking in the right stick. Or I can spend hours trying to figure out how to lay out this stuff to do it all in one combo. But it doesn't work very well. This is one of the first events, so I don't have a lot of options. Just a kicker, not high, medium, or low. So you'd think that if I put a kicker here, I could grab the screw icon really easily, but it just doesn't line up. I miss it over and over and over. I don't know how I could handle this differently. Or how about this one? You get 10 minutes to place a bunch of rails and grab these eggs for some reason. You'll spend a ton of time fighting the camera and the controls to figure out how to lay it out, and then 20 seconds grinding it. And then, unlike the contests in the career category, in the rigger category you have contests. Just really weird ones, like this little slice of sadness. The goal here is a combo on all of the items in the area. There are events like these throughout the game where stuff will light up or get marked when you hit it, but here you're completely in the dark. You have these fun obstacles to skate, which are too high to ollie onto and ungrindable. This one only seems like you can wall plan on it. So the only thing I could figure out to do is place a ton of kickers everywhere, then do this exact route. I have to ollie over this first because you won't have enough speed otherwise. Land in a manual and turn really quick over to this side, ollie onto the container, then ollie on this one right away. Wall plant, try to do the same thing on the other side. Of course, it's harder because the second container is on the close side now, but hit those, try to squeeze every last ounce of speed to get over to this rail and grind it. Did that look fun to you? It wasn't. I think the thing I dislike about this so much is the fact that I'm skating a crappy level. Sure, I made it, but I only have 4 pieces to use. The developers can make anything they want. I'd rather play something professionally designed than something I have to throw together with a timer counting down. So that's the rigger stuff. There's also the hardcore track, and the idea behind this mode is that you skate for yourself. You get challenges to do big gaps and stuff. It's basically the same stuff as the career track, but there's no camera or anything. You'll use the aggro kick to get a lot of speed for certain things. A lot of this stuff is forgettable. Next up is the street stuff, and this isn't story-based, it's just challenges that exist in the world. If you played Project 8, you'll recognize this stuff. Beat the long grind challenge by finding the start and grinding until you pass the other icons. But it has the same problem as the last game. I pretty much never know where to go. Usually you can figure out how to get the AM rating, but after that you might just have to pick a direction and commit to it, and you'll pretty much always be wrong. Trying to get the stick rating would just be a huge waste of time filled with frustrating guesswork. The last thing I wanted to mention is the classic mode. There are arcade units placed around the world that you can fire up to collect skate, combo letters, high scores, and that kind of stuff. And it's a huge waste. The reasons why the games that had those challenges were good is because the levels were designed for it. They were designed around having places to hide letters and secret tapes and stuff like that. Taking a random chunk of the world and throwing some collectibles in it isn't any fun. Having these in here makes the game worse, and it just goes to show how far the series has fallen. As you beat more and more stuff, you'll unlock sponsors and get pro model decks and shoes. There are little story snippets like meeting Eric Sparrow. I mean, it sounds like him, but it doesn't really look that similar. Every time anything happens at all, Tony Hawk will call you, and displaying this Motorola phone is so hard that the game acts like it's going to crash every time. I don't think I listened to a single one of these. After a while, I got stuck in the career mode. I got to a point where I had a whole team put together and I had to shoot a video part for each skater. And I think this was probably the end or close to the end. So I talked to Jeff King and we had to construct some crap and film a combo on it. Bob Burnquist had to do a nail the grab combo thing. And then I had Art Osari as well. I talked to him and I just did Bob Burnquist challenge again. And I couldn't get past that. It seemed like it was glitched out. I don't know if there's a way to trick it into letting me do the right challenge or what was going on, but it was a good excuse to stop playing anyway because I had had enough. This game is just a really unfortunate disappointment because it didn't have to suck so much. It really didn't. You know, most of the time when there's a new series or even the series jumps to a new system or something like that, it's usually the second game that's really good, right? The first one, they're just trying to hit the deadlines. Tony Hawk games were coming out every year, so a new system in 1 year, like, it was kind of a big challenge. So what they could have done is with this one, just refine that system, the Project 8 engine, made it better, made everything feel a little better, more stable, all that kind of stuff. Instead, they decided to just build off of that engine and do more and more and more without ever fixing any of the problems. And so this game just feels like it's going to fall apart all the time. It crashes all the time. It's just terrible. And they never patched it. If they had patched it and it was at least stable, it would have been okay. But the fact that it's bad and unstable is just too much. So this game is a really sad way to end off the series. And I would definitely not suggest picking this one up in any way, especially the PS3 version. One of the big reasons why it took me a while to do this review was trying to track down a copy of the game that wasn't over $20 because I really didn't want to pay that. To pay $20, then spend 15 to 20 hours making a video that's going to make me $10 just didn't make a lot of sense. Especially since it would be torture to do it the whole way. But I figured I had to do it. There's no getting around it. So do not bother to play this game. The 360 version might be a little bit cheaper and maybe more stable as well, but there's just nothing there to really bother with. So I would definitely skip this one. As for what's next in the series, there was Ride and Shred, and those came with the skateboard controllers that you could like lean on and you would turn and you could pop the tail and all that kind of stuff. And I had those both when they came out. Unfortunately, these days, it's very hard to get a copy of those. Game stores do not take in the skateboard controller, at least the ones around here that I've asked. And if you find one at like a thrift store or a pawn shop or something like that, they don't have the transmitter. Because although the systems have Bluetooth or some kind of wireless, you have to have a converter box thing you plug in. And that's never around. To buy that online is another $25 or something. So it's really hard to track down a copy. If I do, I will definitely review it. But for now, that'll probably be the end of the Tony Hawk series. I did do Tony Hawk HD. You can check that out right there. I may redo that one because there are a couple inaccuracies, I guess, in that video that I might want to redo. But there's also Tony Hawk 5. I do have an Xbox One now, so I no longer have an excuse to not do that one. So stay tuned for that. I don't know exactly what's coming next, but I just wanted to let you know where we stood on the series. So that's it for now. If you like this review, there's a lot of other reviews. I've done most of the Tony Hawk series. I've done all the Skate series. I've done plenty of other obscure and rare games that you might want to check out. Make sure you subscribe and keep learning new things about skateboarding 3 times a week. Thanks for watching.